Technology is evolving at an alarming pace. Nowadays, technology relevant only 10 to 20 years ago often become nearly obsolete. Tell me, when was the last time you had to fight your brother or sister over using the Walkman? Yeah, exactly what I thought. Those who fail to adapt will disappear, just like RadioShack. At the height of its popularity, the company operated more than 7,000 stores across North America, Europe, and Australia, bringing in nearly $4 billion a year. And just 15 years later, the company declared bankruptcy and went out of business. So what happened to RadioShack? How did they go from a household name that many people knew and loved to disappearing from everyday life completely? RadioShack, despite what its name implies, wasn't started in a shack. Instead, it was started in 1921 in a small shop in downtown Boston. The owners, Theodore and Milton Deutschmann, weren't secret German super spies, even though their names would imply otherwise. They were born in London, and the brothers were in fact huge radio nerds. In the 1920s, with little to no way to find information about radio technology, this was no easy feat. The field of amateur radio was brand new back in those days. In fact, the first annual official wireless blue book of the Wireless Association of America, it only took me 10 takes to record that, published in 1909, lists less than 100 amateur radio stations. Information about radio technology was often hard to find in books, and parts for radio stations were found at random junkyards and garage sales. But why would anyone build their own radio? For fun, obviously. Fun was a little bit different back then. You know how gamers nowadays build their own PCs? Well, these would be the guys building their own radios 100 years ago. And radio nerds like the Deutschmanns had to work hard to get their hands on equipment. But they had an idea to change that forever. They wanted to become pioneers who would provide amateur and ham radio equipment to the general public. Although not extremely popular yet in the 1920s, the store had its customers. RadioShack was still selling what was, at the time, cutting-edge technology. It would be something like opening a store selling invisibility cloaks left over by the army in 2024, but a lot less Harry Potter-like. Something like that. Anyways, the brothers decided to open this brick-and-mortar store and also start a mail-order operation in the heart of Boston at 46 Brattle Street, which if you look on Google Maps today, I'm not sure if that same building is there. When choosing the name, they decided to call their store RadioShack, a name used for wooden structures that housed radio equipment on ships during that time. Since the Deutschmanns wanted to supply both radio enthusiasts and ship radio operators, the name pretty much made sense. Oh, and credit where credit's due. The name actually came from William J. Halligan, an employee the Deutschmanns hired to work at the store. And don't worry, our friend Billy here isn't some random schmuck that got lost in the annals of history. He actually did pretty well for himself, starting the Hallicrafters Company in 1932, a company that manufactured, produced, and sold high-quality radio equipment. And just like that, RadioShack was born. In 1935, they filed to become official and named themselves the RadioShack Corporation. And at this time, the Deutschmann brothers still ran the entire operation out of their basement store in Boston. By 1938, the company's mail order, industrial business, and cash sales were growing so much that they needed to expand. That year, Milton Deutschmann leased a larger space just 150 yards from their original spot. The new main thoroughfare location became RadioShack's primary business hub. And while I didn't find any photos, I think this was the street and maybe even the building where the second store was located at. The business at the store was fairly simple. The company sold radio and electronic parts directly to the customers and only accepted cash. It was dependent on good location, which RadioShack had, and the ability to attract its target audience, the aforementioned radio enthusiasts. Marketing your business was definitely not the same as today, where you can use Google Ads. But back then, the way you got your product out was through catalogs. The two were so serious that they decided to hire, wait for it, a catalog expert. In 1939, RadioShack launched the first of many catalogs that would help them make billions down the line. The first edition of the RadioShack catalog had 25,000 copies in circulation and helped the company attract more commercial customers like universities and laboratories. By the next year, the number of copies increased to 40,000. The brothers also ended up hiring 2 more workers, a salesman to handle industrial contracts and a credit manager to take care of developing accounts. And the new location the brothers got a year before had enough space to handle more orders, so everything was going smoothly. However, one thing slowed down the entire operation in the 1940s. Interestingly enough, it was the paper shortage caused by the war. I know, definitely not what you were thinking. Newspapers reduced the number of published pages during the war. For example, the Daily Mirror went from 16 to 20 pages in 1940 to just 8 pages in 1941. It took years for newspapers and magazines to get back to the same number of pages as before the war. So, between 1942 and 1949, RadioShack produced a single catalog as seen here. Still, they had name recognition and a good reputation among DIYers of the day, so their sales continued strong despite the situation. As the world entered the 50s, paper shortages were over. The economy was bouncing back, and the country saw a significant increase in the middle class. During the war years, RadioShack continued to do well. More stores were opened during those years, and the company entered the audio equipment market. That included consumer-grade products like amplifiers, speakers, and turntables. In 1947, they even opened an audio showroom in the United States, the first of its kind. The mail commerce business was booming, and RadioShack had 9 retail electronics stores at this time. By the mid-50s, RadioShack even started manufacturing products like recorders, speakers, and amps under the brand name Realist. However, after a while, RadioShack was forced to change the name to Realistic due to a copyright lawsuit from Realist magazine. But other than that tiny hiccup, RadioShack was doing pretty well for themselves in the 50s. Once the 1960s rolled around, RadioShack was the leading distributor for electronic parts, a well-known name among the American DIYers of the day, and was making a lot of money. In 1960, they launched one of their biggest promotions ever, the Free Battery Club. During the promotion, the customers were given a free wallet-sized card that entitled them to 1 free battery each month. But we need to talk about something because things were far from perfect in the 60s. During this time, RadioShack suffered some major setbacks. 1. Credit and debt issues. They started experimenting with selling on credit, but weren't very good at identifying customers that would actually pay on time or at all, which put them in more debt. And secondly, expansion and inventory challenges. Many of RadioShack's assets were tied up in inventory, which is problematic in a crisis as inventory doesn't sell well in a fire sale scenario. Combine this with the rapid expansion of new and larger stores, along with the larger mail order business, and it all became a perfect recipe for disaster. And because of all of this, RadioShack ended up reporting a loss of $800,000 in 1961, which is about $8.2 million when adjusted for inflation. Yeah, RadioShack was in trouble, but thank God for the hero of this story, Charles Tandy. Who's Charles Tandy? Well, glad you asked, because I have a short history lesson for you. First, let's talk about Tandy Leather. The company was founded in 1919 by Norton Hinckley and Dave L. Tandy. In the beginning, it mainly focused on selling leather and shoe supplies. The business weathered the Great Depression and evolved, with Dave Tandy's son, Charles, playing a crucial role in expanding it. Under Charles Tandy, the company expanded its business into the leathercraft and hobby market. The move capitalized on the growing DIY trend at the time, leading to sales growth. And from there, the company began acquiring other businesses to diversify its product offerings. This included acquiring American Handcrafts Company, broadening their market reach beyond just leather goods. The Tandy Corporation went public in 1960, listing on the stock market under the symbol TAN. This gave the company access to more capital, allowing for further expansion and diversification. Tandy was looking to expand his business even further, and he had a passing interest in the consumer electronics market. He tried getting into the market by trying to buy Lafayette Electronics and Allied Electronics, but both deals fell through. Tandy then opened an electronics store, Tandy Mart, in Fort Worth in 1961, but the store wasn't really successful. However, Tandy was determined, and he was not giving up. According to the book Tandy's Money Machine by Bill Brown, an old banker friend of Tandy's was looking for a buyer for RadioShack to avert a financial disaster. After initially declining the deal, Tandy thought about it and then agreed to negotiate a deal. So in March 1963, the Tandy Corporation made a deal and became a majority owner with 62% ownership of RadioShack, and it only cost them $300,000, which in today's money is about $3 million. And just what happened to the original owners, the Deutschman brothers, from here? From my research, they basically went radio silent after this, pun intended. But if any of you know what really happened to him, let me know in the comments. Back to our story. After purchasing the company, Charles Tandy set out to transform the company completely. He wanted to return the company to its roots, stop selling non-electronic products, and turn RadioShack into an international business. Tandy's dream was for RadioShack to have hundreds of stores and hit $100 million in sales. And just to do a little bit of foreshadowing, he lived to see almost 7,000 stores open up during his lifetime and over $1 billion in sales. How did this happen? Right away, Tandy started making big changes. Tandy's idea was, once again, to mainly target the electronic hobbyists. And how does one do that? Well, first you start hiring experts. Basically, you hire the most knowledgeable nerds to guide the less knowledgeable nerds while they shop. Okay, I'll stop saying nerds so much. But that wasn't the only change Tandy made. He also slashed the inventory dramatically. Before Tandy came on board, RadioShack was carrying over 40,000 products. And after, the number was just 2,500. I mean, he only kept the brands that were actually selling. Tandy also shut down the mail order business, focusing 100% on physical stores. The mail order division was luckily a great source of information. Tandy pinpointed RadioShack's loyal customers and opened new stores in areas with strong sales. In the first year alone, Tandy Corporation sales went up 17% and profit jumping by 34%. Yeah, Charles Tandy was onto something. Tandy's work was a success. By the end of the decade, the Tandy Corporation was making over $250 million annually, with the majority coming from their consumer electronics sector, aka RadioShack. Their success continued throughout the 1970s, but then in the late 70s, something very interesting happened. CB radios were becoming more popular, well, than ever. Okay, my younger viewers probably don't know what a CB radio is. Well, neither did I until recently. I'm still young, don't judge me, but let's explain this real quick. CB radios looked like walkie-talkies. Back in the day, truckers, road trippers, and others used these bad boys for talking while driving. You just tune into a channel and boom, you're chatting with people miles away. No internet, no fancy tech, just good old radio waves keeping everyone connected. Basically, this was like the 70s version of a group chat, or something like that. Movies like Convoy and Smokey and the Bandit helped propel the CB radio into fame during that decade. Trans Am sales went up nearly 50% the year Smokey and the Bandit was released. And while we don't have the numbers for CB radios, it's safe to say that they went up too. I mean, everyone was using these things. Betty Ford, the first lady, was using CB radios. Mel Blanc used to hop on his CB radio and talk to truckers in his Bugs Bunny voice. Yeah, so RadioShack hit the jackpot. They were making billions. So far, a lot of the catalog images we use in this video were from a little website called RadioShackCatalogs.com. There you can find every single catalog available. When you look at the catalogs from the late 70s, you find CB radios all over the place. I mean, just look at these. But unfortunately, a year after CB radios became a hit and skyrocketed RadioShack to new heights in the process, tragedy struck. Charles Tandy passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. Tandy's longtime friend and company director, Philip North, became interim president and CEO of the Tandy Corporation. He wasn't really a tech guy, so he didn't do much in his tenure, but someone else was. John V. Roach. Roach started his career in the late 60s and quickly advanced through the ranks, becoming the CEO of RadioShack in 1981. He would end up holding that position until his retirement in 1999. Under his leadership, RadioShack thrived and became a leading player in the personal computer industry. It released the first mass-produced PC on the market, the TRS-80. Designed by 24-year-old engineer Steve Leininger, the TRS-80 was a fully assembled and tested unit, unlike the wonky-looking DIY computers of that time. Yes, it's a slow, simple machine, and we had more powers than our phones 15 years ago. However, the TRS-80 was a tech marvel at the time. It was an expensive, highly demanded piece of machinery. And from 1977 to 1981, over 200,000 TRS-80 Model 1 computers were sold. As the 80s rolled in, RadioShack became America's go-to place for everything related to home electronics. They were offering low prices and cutting-edge gadgets, which resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars in profits. Another movie helped RadioShack make a ton of money. Wall Street. In the movie, Gordon Gekko did a lot of cool and bad stuff, all while flaunting his Motorola Dynatac 8000X cell phone, also known as the Brick. Despite its $4,000 price tag, the Brick was a status symbol in the mid to late 1980s. Yeah, the style was strange in the 80s, but really thinking about it, having an iPhone back in middle school and high school was seen as having money, so I guess things haven't changed that much. RadioShack capitalized by offering cheaper cell alternatives to consumers. You could talk on the beach like Michael Douglas's character and get a nice little bicep workout while you're at it. They were also going international. In 1986, Intertan was formed by the Tandy Corporation to oversee RadioShack's international operations. Tandy's international strategy was to buy electronic businesses in various countries worldwide and rebrand them as RadioShack. They quickly expanded to countries like Canada, England, Australia, the Netherlands, and even West Germany. With that, the Tandy Corporation entered the 1990s with close to 7,000 stores, with 6,500 of them being RadioShacks worldwide. Phones and computers were flying off the racks. Business was expanding to continents like Asia and more companies were being bought. Computer City, for instance, was a chain of superstores the Tandy Corporation bought and used to sell, well, what else? Computers. The Tandy Co. also opened Incredible Universe, a chain of electronic stores known for their size, with a typical store covering 185,000 square feet and stocking over 85,000 items. And following their international growth, in 1994, they introduced a new service called the Repair Shop. You see, despite being known for selling VCRs, TVs, and computers, RadioShack had a lot of spare parts that weren't selling. So the guys at the shack came up with a simple plan. The customers would bring in their broken devices, and RadioShack would provide the new parts and install them, sometimes on the spot. For a major mainstream brand, this was actually something pretty unique. It helped them gain the trust of consumers and make over $500 million. If you know any other brand that offered something similar in the 90s, let me know. By the end of the decade, RadioShack was on top. They offered nearly a dozen personal computers, more than 300 TV models, and 40,000 movie and music titles. If you wanted to have fun in the 90s, similar to the way we have fun now, chances are RadioShack was involved in some capacity. In terms of money making, 1996 was the peak year for RadioShack at the time, as it made $3.2 billion in revenue. Scrolling through the timeline, let's stop at 1999. John Roach stepped down from the CEO position. Leonard Roberts, the former CEO of Arby's, who helped the restaurant chain expand by 900 new restaurants in just 4 years, became the new head honcho at the Tandy Corporation. While profit began slipping as the world entered a new millennium, things were still good. The company strategically partnered with numerous companies including RCA, Compaq, and Sprint. Take note of that last partnership because it'll be pretty important later. They even survived the Y2K panic. I mean, everything was perfect. Nothing could stop RadioShack. Or so we thought. The home electronics market started changing while RadioShack was at the height of its power. Chains like Circuit City and Best Buy were emerging as new competitors. Their stores were big and stocked to the brim with everything you could imagine. The electronics market wasn't niche anymore. Nearly all of the larger store chains in America were starting to sell the same products, or better brands than RadioShack at competitive prices. In May 2000, the Tandy Corporation officially changed its name to RadioShack Corporation, and its New York Stock Exchange symbol changed to RSH. And it made sense. Throughout the Tandy Corporation's ownership of RadioShack, their company has slowly shifted from being a leathers good company that owned RadioShack to a home electronics company that owned and made most of its money off of RadioShack, all the way to basically just being RadioShack. So the thought process must have been that their other operations were not bringing in as much money, and having one central brand would help keep the focus going into the new millennium. And I'm guessing they chose RadioShack as the name of the company, and not some random General Electronics name, because Computer City and Incredible Universe were both in the red, losing the company $100 million before being closed down permanently. Long time no see, RadioShack was in the same situation as it was back in the 60s. They were selling a lot of products, but they were operating at a loss. Things needed to change quickly and drastically. And this is where the quote-unquote good ideas start flowing. Brace yourselves. In an attempt to revive their lagging stores, RadioShack launched the Fix 1500 initiative in 2004. This program targeted the 1,500 lowest performing store managers, demanding improvements or facing demotion or even termination. And what did it fix? Nothing. It just resulted in over 1,000 firings and resignations. Further complicating matters, in 2006, RadioShack closed numerous stores, realizing they had an oversaturation of locations. The company also faced backlash for intensively laying off many headquarters staff via email. During this time, it also became painfully clear that RadioShack made the mistake of not utilizing the internet for promotion and sales. While e-commerce sales represented a small percentage of all retail sales, the writing was on the wall. Online shopping was the way of the future. Everyone saw this except for RadioShack, it seems. They only started selling products through their website around 2006. Now, while multiple sources claim that they didn't enter the e-commerce field until 2006, I did check their website on the Wayback Machine, and they may have started in October 2005. But I'm not 100% on this. If you guys have any information about this, let me know in the comments. But nonetheless, it was too little, too late. Oh no guys, it doesn't stop here. There's more to add to RadioShack's demise. Now that we had smartphones, we didn't need old school radios. Smartphones were cool, functional, and disposable, much like the other electronics in our homes. So we didn't have to do home repairs on electronics like before. In 2008, they tried again to shake things up with another relatively strange move. In an effort to appeal to a younger demographic that viewed the brand as outdated, they shortened their name and came up with a slang. Our friends call us the Shack. They even threw in a celebration in Times Square to celebrate the rebranding. They brought out a giant screen that looked like a laptop, organized exercises, and broadcasted the event over the internet. Yeah, strangeness all around. Well, Pizza Hut shortened its name to The Hut at this time, and I think RadioShack saw the move and simply followed suit. But everyone wants to know, was the campaign successful? When that didn't work, the Shack quickly regrouped and went back to RadioShack. By 2009, RadioShack's customer service reputation had deteriorated significantly. Efforts to improve this aspect included direct feedback initiatives in stores, but these efforts didn't do enough to change the negative public opinion. As RadioShack entered a new decade, the focus shifted to selling smartphones. They trained their staff to sell and upsell phones and everything that comes with them. And by the end of the year, smartphone sales accounted for more than half of their $4.4 billion in revenue. But they pretty much stopped selling most of the electronic stuff that used to bring in all the do-it-yourselfers. The change alienated many longtime customers who relied on RadioShack for the unique electronic parts and gadgets. At this point, RadioShack was in a lot of trouble. Their stocks were at a 15-year low, and their troubles didn't stop there. Okay, I apologize for stopping all of a sudden, but there's something I need to talk about. You see, between 2006 and 2015, The Shack went through 10 different managers. While all of them made questionable decisions, for a lack of a better phrase, I have a couple of favorites, and let's look at them quickly. It all began with David Edmondson, who resigned after admitting to falsifying his educational qualifications. Despite his successful marketing background, the scandal over his lack of education overshadowed his professional achievements. The guy was a good businessman. Julian Day then stepped in as CEO, focusing on aggressive cost-cutting measures. Under Day, nearly 500 stores were closed and over 1,100 employees were laid off. While these actions initially boosted the stock price and improved cash flow, they also significantly decreased employee morale. Day's tenure concluded with the company's market value being lower than when they started, indicating a failure to foster long-term growth. James Gooch succeeded Day, but his time as CEO saw a dramatic 80% drop in stock value. His strategy that heavily focused on mobile phones and plans failed to revive the company's fortunes. During Gooch's tenure, RadioShack reported a $21 million loss in one quarter, compounded by a debt of approximately $680 million. To keep it simple, it wasn't looking good for RadioShack. In the previous decade, RadioShack was regularly repurchasing its own stock. They were spending billions trying to pump up the share price, but the strategy didn't really do much. Let's try to explain the loan situation, because it's complex, complicated, tangled, and convoluted, all the synonyms you can think of. I'll try to explain it to the best of my abilities. Initially in December 2013, RadioShack took out a massive $535 million loan, which was managed by GE Capital. The loan was supposed to provide RadioShack with a flexible source of funding. The loan was secured by RadioShack's assets, which means the lender could take their assets if they failed to repay the loan in time. By October 2014, the control of this loan shifted to Standard General LP. At the same time, RadioShack had another separate term loan of $250 million from Salus Capital Partners LLC and Cerberus Capital Management. By that time, they were losing $1.1 million daily, so they had no chance of actually paying off their debts. In early 2015, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. To ease the situation, RadioShack obtained a $285 million DIP loan financing from DW Partners LP. DIP financing is a specific type of loan used by companies undergoing bankruptcy to continue their operations. This $285 million included a provision to consolidate some of RadioShack's existing debts, and also offered an additional borrowing capacity of $20 million. The Shack also issued $333 million in unsecured notes in 2019, adding another layer to their debt structure. The company wasn't giving up. I mean, they've lost many of battles, but the war wasn't over. Amidst these financial restructurings, RadioShack was also exploring strategic moves to revive its business. This included a plan to sell up to 2,400 stores and a partnership with Sprint to establish mini Sprint stores within some RadioShack locations. They also closed down many locations to cut down on expenses. RadioShack hoped all of this would revive their brand, but that didn't happen. By 2017, they went completely bankrupt. They also got tangled up in a lawsuit with Sprint. The lawsuit, seeking $500 million, accused Sprint of not stocking and staffing the co-branded stores as promised. Sprint planned to fight these claims, but the situation was ironic, considering SoftBank, Sprint's parent company, had promised significant US job creation during this period. The promise was in line with then President-elect Donald Trump's job-focused campaign, and Trump even credited Sprint for bringing jobs to the US. At the end of the day, RadioShack had now become nothing more than a punchline. In 2020, Retail E-commerce Ventures purchased RadioShack's assets and aimed to transform the store chain into a cutting-edge e-commerce company. The purchase price wasn't disclosed, but in the past, REV has purchased several failed brands with name brand recognition. And who was a part owner of that company, you may ask? Well, none other than Tai Lopez. Yes, that's the guy from the original Here in My Garage video where he shows off A, his garage, B, his Lambo, or C, his knowledge, which can be found in books. Lots of books. Unsurprisingly, Lopez launched a cryptocurrency platform called RadioShack Swap and its own token, Radio, to appeal to the crypto community. RadioShack also adopted a more edgy and provocative social media presence to attract the people's attention. But was it a good strategy? For attracting eyes? Yeah, sure. To create a real user base? Not at all. For being taken seriously? Not by a long shot. While the campaign did attract some users, in less than a year, the token was down 99% from its all-time high, and as of August 2023, Tai Lopez no longer owns the RadioShack brand. Unicommer Group, a Salvadorian financial group, has purchased the intellectual property of RadioShack, although the amount for the purchase is unknown. So where did everything go wrong? Why did RadioShack fail after nearly a century in the business? If we do a post-mortem on the Shack, we can pinpoint 5 specific reasons the company failed in the 21st century. Number 1, no strong mission statement. In the beginning, RadioShack had a clear audience, tech geeks. However, as the company grew, it lost its focus. They ended up selling general items you can buy anywhere. Hindsight is 2020, but if they had just focused on entertaining tech geeks, they could have been the modern-day Best Buy or GameStop or Micro Center, somehow missing the online train. While the world was busy shopping in their pajamas online, RadioShack clung to its brick-and-mortar roots like a stubborn boomer, betting on the wrong pony. Radio Shack bet big on cell phones, but as margins shrunk, so did their profits. So they put all of their chips on the wrong color. David doesn't always beat Goliath. The internet age birthed many heavyweights in the industry and created a lot of losers. Radio Shack was one of them. Amazon, Best Buy, and others were too much for the Shack to compete with. CEO musical chairs. The top brass at Radio Shack changes with the seasons. Each new CEO brought their own brilliant ideas, leaving the company spinning in circles. So how's the situation looking for Radio Shack in 2024? The brand has not fully disappeared from the map. Over 400 independently owned locations still operate within America. Unikomer holds the rights to the Radio Shack name in around 70 countries, including the US, Canada, Europe, and China. While the new owner has not shared specific plans, there is potential for Radio Shack to follow a similar path as Toys R Us, which found success as a store within a store concept at Macy's. Do you think there's still hope for Radio Shack? Or is it just time to call it quits? I have my thoughts, but I'll debate them with y'all in the comments below. I would recommend another video right here, but I don't have any yet. So subscribe, and if I do have another video, it'll be showing right here.